let's take a look at the Microboard R4K310C. The R4K310C, that's such a long name. It's hard to remember. It's just this name for a monitor, it's not good. Very bad. They should have called it the Microboard Super Awesome IPS. That's what they should have called it, because it's pretty super awesome. The worst thing about this monitor is that it's not big enough. It's 31 inches, but it's 4K. It's true 4K, 4096 by 2160, and this is the same panel that you'll find in the LG 31MU97. So this is a 31.7 inch diagonal LCD screen at 4096 by 2160. It is a true 4K. 4096 by 2160 is a little bit of a challenge for older graphics cards, so you're only going to be able to use this with a newer graphics card. It also has the same controller in it that we've been used to from the other Korean monitors. This one, however, has been updated for FreeSync. However, I couldn't get FreeSync to work on mine for whatever reason. There is a firmware update available for it. I got sort of one of the very, very early ones where FreeSync was questionable. So if you get one of these and you have problems with FreeSync on it, they will replace it. Now, in terms of overclockability, I overclocked the crap out of this monitor. It will overclock, but it has significant frame skip. So I think that the variability in the frame rate there is really just for FreeSync. And so the FreeSync range, like just manually specifying the refresh rate using the tweak utility on the computer, I was able to go from 62 Hertz with no frame skip down to about 45 frames per second with no frame skip. So I think that the FreeSync range should be on the order of 45 to 62 Hertz. And that was at both 1080p and 4K that I was messing around with it. So at the 62 Hertz on the 4K, it's a very, very slight overclock. But at 1080p, even going past 62 Hertz to 70 Hertz, 75 Hertz, 90 Hertz, 120 Hertz, I had significant frame skipping from anything much past 62 Hertz. So the board says it's supported, but the board will not actually push that refresh rate at 1080p, even on this display. Now, one thing to note, if you are playing on this monitor at 1080p, it is not a perfect scaling. So with 3840, it's a doubling of 1080p. And so it's going to be very sharp. 1080p is very sharp on a 3840 by 2160 display because there is no scaling. Well, this monitor gives you options in the on-screen display. You can do a 1:1 or you can do a widescreen. And depending on what mode it's in, you'll have a little bit of a black bar on the side when you're at 1080p because it's only going to give you 3840 by 2160 as opposed to the full 4K wide. So you still can play with that perfect sharpness at 1080p on this display, but you're going to have little black bars on the side that make up the difference between 3840 and 4096. Now, because this is a 31-inch monitor and it is 4096 by 2160, it does have a significantly high pixel density. Now, I find it's okay to use as long as you're sitting relatively close to the monitor, but it's not quite as comfortable to use as the normal standard issue, 4K monitor. However, this is a true LG IPS display, so you get a little bit of backlight bleed, which I was able to fiddle with and reduce the backlight bleed, and you do also get some of the other stuff that goes with a true IPS panel. But in terms of the Adobe RGB color gamut, this is 99% of the Adobe sRGB because it is the same panel that you find in the LG monitors. And this is also, of course, from Microboard. Now, Microboard, I really like what they're doing with the brand because it's an all-metal case. You have this wonderful chrome stand that the monitor comes with. This thing is so heavy. If it were on a homicide report, it would definitely be labeled a blunt instrument. It is great. It is an awesome monitor foot. A lot of manufacturers could learn a thing or two from Microboard about the aesthetics of a monitor and what it should be. And so this one is a little less post-apocalyptic than previous Microboard monitors and a little bit more postmodern. It's got a nice combination of sort of chrome and black. Now, there are some minor surface defects on some of the other Microboard monitors we looked at on the chrome finish. There are minor surface defects on some of the chrome parts. The same is true with this monitor. There are some minor surface defects on the chrome parts of this monitor, but I don't find that distracting or weird or anything, especially when you consider the cost savings of this monitor over the LG monitor that has the equivalent panel. Now, in terms of inputs, this thing has one HDMI 2.0, one HDMI 1.4, and one HDMI MHL. HDMI MHL, you say? What is that? Well, there are some devices out there that can do HDMI over micro USB or HDMI over some other type of connector, and HDMI MHL is an HDMI compatible interface that is sort of a bit blasted interface for sending a digital stream that's not exactly HDMI to an actual HDMI port. So some cell phones, for example, have a USB port that is a USB MHL, and to go from that to HDMI, you just get a cable, and then you can mirror your phone's display on a television with the MHL standard. So if you're looking for MHL, this particular monitor has MHL. Now the DisplayPort 1.2 port can operate in a DisplayPort 1.1 mode, but you're going to have a reduced screen refresh rate if you do that, of course. The anti-glare coating on this display is great. It is a good anti-glare coating, but it doesn't interfere with the sharpness of the display. So 4K and 31 inches means that you're working with a pretty high pixel per inch count. And that means that you're going to lose some sharpness if the anti-glare coating is too much on the display. But they really seem to have done a good job. LG seems to have really done a good job with the anti-glare coating on this, because even though it is an anti-glare display, the pixel sharpness remains intact. And so I found that I was able to use this display at 100% scaling, no problems, hooked up to both my Surface Book and my desktop with a 980 Ti graphics adapter. And it worked really, really well. It was really sharp. I found that if I sat too far away from it, I had trouble seeing it because it was 31 inches. But as long as I was pretty close to the display, I was able to use it at 100%. Now there was one other quirk with this. The flicker-free backlight is the most flicker-free at 100% brightness. I was able to tell a little bit of flicker when the brightness was down around 10% or 15% or so. And so that's what made me sort of curious. And so it's really strange. Normally with a flicker-free backlight, you've got some kind of DC control. And so it's basically a DC output. It's basically a solid wave. Or one of the other types of flicker-free backlights is a backlight that flickers on and off at an ungodly high refresh rate, like in the kilohertz, so fast that there's just no possible way that your eyes could actually see the off versus on, because the material that actually glows in the LEDs or in the light source doesn't actually go off because it's flickering on and off at such a rapid rate. This backlight system doesn't seem to be a DC backlight system. It seems to be one of the kilohertz range type backlights. So for me personally, there was a noticeable flicker with the brightness around 10% or so. By default, the brightness is on 50%, and I was able to use a camera setup here so you can kind of see that when the brightness is 90% or 100%, there is no perceptible flicker. So if you run a display like this at a relatively low brightness and you're sensitive to the flicker, then that may be a concern for you. But I asked some friends to also look at it and see if they could tell if the thing was flickering at 10%, 15%, 20, 25%. I was the only one that could actually see a flicker, and that's what made me haul out the camera and mess with the camera and the shutter settings on the camera. And it's like, okay, what are we looking at? I also do the test where I wave my hand in front of the display, and so you can kind of see that here as I wave my hand in front of the display at the different brightness settings, what you can expect in terms of flicker. Now officially the implementation here is supposed to be a flicker-free backlight, and it certainly is flicker-free when you're on the upper echelons of the brightness setting, but on the lower end of the brightness setting, I think there is a little bit of flicker there, and that would seem to be confirmed by the camera test. So just something to keep in mind, something that I thought you should be aware of. Now overall, I'm very satisfied with the Microboard R4K310C. It is a very solid monitor. I really like that it's based on the actual real LG IPS panel. It is an actual LG panel. It's not a knockoff panel or anything like that. It is a really solid monitor. It's a solid metal construction. It looks great. If you have like a postmodern office or any kind of office where the public will see your monitors or other people will see your setup and you want it to look really pro and really clean, it's hard to beat the Microboard aesthetic. It really is. And this is a solid monitor in terms of electronics and all of the other stuff. If you do end up having a problem with FreeSync, or you do end up having a problem with some of the other stuff, then that you can get a return. So keep that in mind. Overall though, I'm really, really satisfied with this monitor. It's very solid. If you have any questions, or you picked one of these up, or you have a story to share, head on over to the forums at techsyndicate.com. I'm Wendell. I'm signing out. I'll see you there.